When the world-famous scientist passed away, he wanted only his ashes to remain. But it didn't happen that way. We will tell you the story of Albert Einstein's brain, which traveled in a jar for years without his permission. Like the video first and watch until the end. When Einstein passed away on April 18, 1955, the pathologist on duty, Dr. Thomas Harvey, cut open her skull and stole her brain during the autopsy. Moreover, he did not get permission from either Einstein or the physicist's family to do this. The doctor, who soon lost his job at the hospital due to this unethical action, took Einstein's brain to Philadelphia. He divided the brain into 2 jars and stored it in his basement. When Thomas Harvey's wife started threatening her husband, the doctor set out and made a journey to the Midwest of the country. Dr. Harvey worked for a time as a medical supervisor at a biological testing laboratory in Kansas, where he kept the brain in a box hidden under an alcoholic beverage cooler. He later moved to Missouri and devoted his free time to improving himself in the medical field, but lost his medical license in 1988 after failing a 3-day qualifying exam. The doctor, who lost his job for the brain he stole, later moved to Kansas. Here he got a job on the assembly line at a plastic extrusion factory. Moving to a second-floor apartment next to a gas station, the doctor soon became friends with his neighbor, writer William S. Burroughs, one of the leading names in the literary world. The 2 men met regularly for drinks on Burroughs' front porch. While Harvey was telling stories about the brain, writer Burroughs boasted to his visiting guests that he could have a piece of Einstein whenever he wanted. While all this was happening, Einstein's son was not very happy about his father's brain being taken without permission, but Dr. Harvey had difficulty convincing him to allow the brain to be examined and said he would publish his findings soon. Reporter Stephen Levy didn't know what happened to the brain until 1978, when he met Dr. Harvey. After the meeting between Stephen Levy and Harvey, what happened to Einstein's brain gradually came to light. He stole Einstein's brain and cut it into 240 slices. This only happens in movies. He divided it into 240 slices and put it in the jar. Dr. Harvey was obsessed with examining the brain of the genius scientist Einstein. Before the brain was sliced 240 times, black and white photographs were taken using a 35mm camera. Harvey and his colleagues in California published the first study on Einstein's brain, which was kept in a jar for 40 years. What have these studies told us about Einstein's brain and the nature of intelligence? Diamond's 1985 paper in Experimental Neurology identified one of the 4 brain samples as having more so-called glial cells for every neuron, compared to a control group of brains. Glial cells, which get their name from the Greek for glue, fix neurons into place and keep them supplied with oxygen and nutrients. In previous research on rats, Diamond had shown that a stimulating environment can lead to an increase in glial cell count. Perhaps the low ratio of neurons to glial cells in Einstein's brain sample reflected a life devoted to the biggest and most stimulating scientific puzzles. More studies followed. In 1996, Britt Anderson at the University of Alabama at Birmingham published a study on Einstein's prefrontal cortex. He found that the number of neurons was equivalent to brains in a control group, but they were more tightly packed, allowing, perhaps, for faster processing of information. In a 1999 Lancet paper, Sandra Wedelson from McMaster University in Canada studied Harvey's original photographs of Einstein's brain. She said that Einstein's inferior parietal lobule, the part of the brain responsible for spatial cognition and mathematical thought, was wider than normal and seemed better integrated. Perhaps, Wedelson speculated, the shape of the brain may relate to Einstein's own descriptions of his thinking, in which words do not seem to play any role, but there is an associative play of more or less clear images. In 2012, the eminent anthropologist Dean Falk worked with a set of previously unseen photographs of Einstein's brain that Harvey had taken with an Exacta camera. She did a complete audit of the brain, naming every convolution and crevice, and found a number of unusual features. Perhaps the most striking is that Einstein had an extra ridge on his midfrontal lobe, the part used for making plans and working memory. Most people have 3 ridges, but Einstein had 4. She also found Einstein's parietal lobes were dramatically asymmetric, and he had a knob on his right motor strip. This latter feature is called the sign of omega, and it is thought to be correlated to musicians who use their left hands. Einstein played the violin. Falk was also named on a 2013 study that looked at Einstein's unusual corpus callosum, the bundle of fibers connecting the left and right hemispheres of the brain. The researchers found Einstein's was thicker than in control groups, suggesting enhanced cooperation between brain hemispheres. Based on Falk, Lepore, and Noé, 2013, The Cerebral Cortex of Albert Einstein, a description and preliminary analysis of unpublished photographs. Photographs of the brain reproduced with permission from the National Museum of Health and Medicine, Silver Spring, MD. The question arises, are these features that Einstein developed throughout a life devoted to higher thought, or was he born with them? People are born with the basic pattern of convolutions in their brains, but the extent to which these are reshaped by experience is unknown. The sign of omega may have developed as Einstein practiced the violin as a boy, Falk says, but she thinks it is more difficult to assess the contribution of life's experiences to other parts of the brain. With each of these papers, starting with Marion Diamond in 1985, the press splashed the story with headlines suggesting that scientists had discovered the special neural wiring responsible for EAMC2. The truth is that the links with Einstein's genius have never been anything more than speculative. You can't take just one brain of someone who is different from everyone else, and we pretty much all are, and say, aha, I have found the thing that makes T. Haynes a stamp collector, says Terrence Hines, a psychologist and stamp collector at Pace University, who has been very critical of all the Einstein brain studies. If you have this notion that stamp collecting was caused by something different in the brain, and you looked at my brain and compared my brain to 100 other brains, you could find something different and say, aha, I have found the center of stamp collecting. And it's bull. The first victim of this tendency was arguably Harvey himself. He told Stephen Levy in 1978 that all the research so far conducted on the brain showed it to be within normal limits for a man his age. But rather than publishing these results, Harvey waited for exceptional differences to turn up, differences worthy of an exceptional man. This selection bias was also evident in the first of the studies to find a possibly significant difference, Marion Diamond's. She subjected the 4 brain samples to 7 different tests. Hines says, but Einstein's brain only came back as unusual in one of the measures, the glial cells, and only in one of the samples. In what has become a bitter spat about the body of a famously mild-mannered man, Falk and her co-writers insist that Einstein's brain is exceptional. There is a natural variation in our brain anatomy, true, but Einstein possessed unusual features in every cerebral lobe, some very unusual, but they are willing to accept that it's impossible to map these anatomical differences onto Einstein's genius with any certainty. I don't know if Einstein was a genius because his parietal lobes were different, says, say, Dr. Frederick Lepore, a neurologist who worked with Dean Falk on the 2012 paper. If you put my feet to the fire and you say, where's special relativity? Where did general relativity come from? We have no idea. Einstein was, of course, lots of things besides being a genius. He was bilingual, musical, and even, it has been suggested, autistic. What did we learn from Einstein's brain in a jar? I would like to end this with the words of Anna Doty, curator of the Mutter Institute, which currently houses samples of Einstein's brain. There is a night and day difference between a living brain and a dead brain. There is an infinite amount of things you can study and learn about a living brain. What you can learn from the brain is very limited. If you liked the video, do not forget to subscribe to the channel to receive such videos.